on how to take care of this money thing during college. She will be here to answer questions that you have. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll have a Q&A portion at the end where you can ask questions in the Q&A box. And without further ado, Greta, take it away.
Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. It is always a pleasure to be with this group of prospective students as we anticipate all being together, hopefully in the fall semester. My name is Greta Kendrick. I am the Senior Associate Director in the Office of Student Financial Services. I am a double alum of Georgetown University, so I'm just a little bit biased, but nonetheless, we're going to talk a little bit this afternoon about financial aid, and I would hope at this point that majority of you have heard from our office with regards to your need-based financial aid award for the 21-22 academic year. And if you have not received your award notice, that you've been in contact with our office in communication with one of my colleagues to find out what it is that you need to do in order to complete your application. So first, let me just welcome you to Georgetown, the virtual Georgetown Hilltop. On behalf of Dean Patricia McWade and my colleagues, we are excited about your admissions to the university, and it is our sincere hope that you will be with us in the fall. And so again, what we're going to do this afternoon is talk a little bit about financial aid, how we award financial aid, and some of the pertinent processes that I think that you should be aware of. And if you have questions, and we'll certainly answer those questions for you at the end of this presentation. So again, I'm from the Office of Student Financial Services, and what exactly is it that we do? We analyze submitted financial aid applications for students who have been accepted or offered admissions to the university. If you take nothing else away from this session, I want you to please understand that whether you attend Georgetown or some other institution, financial aid is awarded primarily by two methodologies, either need-based financial aid or merit-based financial aid. And at Georgetown University, we award financial aid based on need. So when you are comparing your financial aid awards from the various schools that you've applied to, make sure that you're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. In many instances, it's very difficult for a need-based institution to compete with a merit-based award. It doesn't mean that you should not consider it, but just understand the methodologies are completely different, and take that into consideration when you're thinking about the school that you're going to enroll in for the fall semester. So what do? We ask you to complete the FAFSA, the Federal Free Application for Free Financial Aid. And we also ask you to complete the CSS profile application. And what we do is we take the information from both of those processes and we merge those together, or we marry them together to come up with what we feel your family should be able to contribute towards your education at Georgetown should you decide to attend. And so in that evaluation, what we do is we look at roughly what we call a cost of attendance. The cost of attendance is basically a budget for the academic year of what it would cost for you to attend Georgetown. The variables within that budget are your tuition, mandatory fees, personal, books, travel, things of that nature. And the estimated cost for this upcoming year is roughly about $82,000. So we are talking about a very large price tag. But again, I always say, please do not let the price tag of any school that you're interested in, that has the curriculum that you're interested in, don't let that deter you. It is a sacrifice though. But again, so that you understand within your award notice, you should have received what your actual cost. The number that I just quoted to you is an estimated cost. But if you have received your award letter, your specific cost of attendance was listed there. So you'll know exactly what it is that you're looking at. So what we do is, again, after we take the information from the FAFSA and the CSS profile, we merge that to do an analysis based on your parents' income and any assets that you and your parents may have to come up with what we feel, again, a good family contribution would be for you to contribute towards your overall cost of attendance. That family contribution is comprised of two components. One is a student contribution, and the institution implements a minimum of $2,200 for an expected student contribution. And then the other component is the calculated parental contribution based on the financial information that you self-reported and that we verified on your FAFSA and CSS profile. So we'll take that cost of attendance, deduct the calculated expected family contribution, and the difference between the two is what we would describe as your need, your financial aid. So again, we try to keep it very simple. It's cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution. The difference is what we would call or do call your estimated demonstrated need. Just looking here, making sure that I cover all my notes. Again, your cost of attendance is going to include tuition fees, room and board, books, supplies, miscellaneous, and travel as well. So when you are completing the FAFSA application, what you're actually or what you are applying for are any federal revenues that the federal government makes available to students that are applying to colleges and universities. Those resources include student loans, work study, federal Pell Grant, a supplemental grant, and in some cases there are nursing grants that are available. And so what we do is we get that number back from the Department of Education from your FAFSA, and we look at that number, and from that number, we are able to determine whether you qualify for a Pell Grant. Not everybody qualifies for a Pell Grant. It is all driven on the calculated estimated family contribution. From completion of the FAFSA, you should have received back what we call a student aid report. And basically that is a summary of that FAFSA, of your self-reported information. In the upper right-hand corner, I believe, is you should see the acronyms EFC. And the EFC, that is the number that the Department of Education feels that your family should be able to contribute based on the information that you've supplied on the FAFSA. Now, I tell my families all the time, don't get married to that number, because remember, there's a second component of that, which is the CSS profile that we merge together. Now, the CSS profile has a tendency, or it does, take a more stringent look at your family's assets. Anything that is not captured on the FAFSA, we capture on the CSS profile. So at a minimum, the EFC that you see that is on your student aid report is going to be heightened slightly by the expected student contribution. Oftentimes we get phone calls and emails from students saying, well, the FAFSA said that my family should be able to contribute $2,500, but Georgetown is asking for $2,200 more. In the most basic scenario, that's because we have added on an expected student contribution. So completing the FAFSA, we determine what your eligibility is for federal funds. Again, that includes student loans and any Pell Grant and the opportunity to work. Work study is also a component that is not shown up on your bill. Work study is earning potential, meaning within the academic year, you have the opportunity to reach out to our student employment office to find a job, to work. Once you get acclimated academically, on average, our students work anywhere between 6 to 10 hours a week. And every 2 weeks, they receive a paycheck. And with that paycheck, you do with it what you need to do with it to sustain yourself, whether it's to purchase books, to put it away for travel to get home for the holidays, or if necessary, to apply it to your billing statement. That is what those resources are used for. Okay. The other side of the equation is once we determine your need, and let's just, again, keep the numbers simple. Let's just say that your cost of attendance, we said, is $80,000. And we've determined that your family contribution should be about half of that, let's say 40. So your remaining need would be about $40,000. And so what we first do is we're going to maximize our federal resources first. So that means we're going to maximize your student loans. And as an incoming freshman, the subsidized maximum amount is $3,500. We're going to maximize any work study potential, and the maximum award for that would be about $3,000. And the difference thereof is then met with Georgetown Need-Based Scholarship. The award is based on your enrollment of 12 credits or more. And I often tell my students, to be careful if you start to make adjustments to your schedule that may take you below the full-time enrollment, because then it requires us to make adjustments to your financial aid. So your initial financial aid award that you've received or that you will be receiving is based on your enrollment of 12 credits or more per semester. Once we decide or figure out your federal resources, we then institute the Georgetown Need-Based Scholarship. Now, students have to apply for financial aid every year. You have to complete the FAFSA and the CSS profile every year so that we're able to determine what your demonstrated need is. So the award that you have for this year is specifically for this academic year. We are following a procedure called prior. Realistically, when you completed the FAFSA and the CSS profile, you used your parent and your 2019 federal income tax information. Now, if there has been some change in your family's finances, perhaps a loss of a job or a reduction in income, and 2019 is not reflecting your actual financial standing, then I would encourage you to please reach out to our office to speak to your representatives, and he or she will give you instructions on what you should do in terms of submitting documentation for what we call reconsideration. So keep in mind, again, the award is based on 2019. If there happened to be, let's say, one of your parents made it a one-time award was given to them, monetary award, that's not going to be a repetitive amount that they're going to receive every year, and it has inflated their income for 2019, then that's grounds for you to reach out to us to say, hey, this was an anomaly. It's not going to happen every year. It inflated our income. Let's have a conversation about where we really stand in terms of our family's finances. In the same breath, coming out of a very rough year, 2020, a lot of families experienced a lot of loss of income due to the pandemic. So if your family has been impacted by the pandemic of 2020 in terms of loss of income, please reach out to our our office, so that we can have a discussion with you about the steps that you need to take so that we can take a more accurate analysis of what your family's financial ability is. Now, there are different types. We talked about the various types of resources that the FAFSA makes available to you, that we're going to incorporate those into your, say, your $40,000 demonstrated need. Many of you have applied for outside scholarships that you've well deserved and earned. And what we're going to do is incorporate that as well into that roughly, let's say, $80,000 cost of attendance. What I need you to remember is that in need-based financial aid, you are not allowed to have financial aid in excess of your cost of attendance. So what that means is we have to incorporate everything within that budget, within that $80,000 budget for the 9-month academic year. So if you have questions, or if you are the recipient of outside scholarships, I encourage you to please reach out to our office to talk to your representatives about how they are going to impact the offer that we initially have made to you, so that you know exactly what you're looking at. I often tell the families in my particular caseload to reach out to me, and I can tell you specifically how much you can receive in outside funding before it begins to affect your Georgetown need-based scholarship. If you receive need-based scholarship in excess of your eligibility within that cost of attendance, it simply becomes a reduction of the Georgetown scholarship, and we simply use the outside funding so that students are able to take advantage of the outside funding. I often ask students to reach out to the private foundations to see if they will allow them to defer the funding for a later period of enrollment, say in the summertime when we don't meet full need in the summertime, or perhaps the next academic year. Again, we talked about the basic components that we use from the federal aspect, meaning the student loan. And I know a lot of students have some trepidation about student loans. Believe me, educational loans are not a bad thing. I understand the fear or the fear behind, the thought behind the fear of student loans, but they're really not a bad thing. What you're doing is you're making an investment into your future. These loans are not payable immediately. In most cases, you have about a 6-month grace period before you start to repay, and you don't go into repayment until one of two things. Either you drop less than half time. So again, I ask you to be cognizant of your enrollment credit hours so that you don't fall below the halftime status, or at such time when you've completed your tenure at Georgetown and you've graduated. You've got 6 months of a 6-month grace period before you will be contacted by your lender to begin repayment. But we can have more conversations about that at a later date, but just so that you know, we do maximize our federal resources. Again, work study is also an excellent component that we incorporate into the financial aid package to help you sustain yourself throughout the academic year. Our work study positions run the gamut from basic clerical, if you have a more specialized skill, say in computers. We have offices on campus that are looking for Georgetown students. The minimum wage in DC now is $15 an hour, so you can really earn decent money through the work study program to help maintain yourself as a student at Georgetown. Now, a lot of times we hear, what will impact my expected family contribution? There are a number of components that can have an impact. On your CSS profile, we ask the question if there are other siblings that you may have that are enrolled in college, specifically undergraduate. We do not permit graduate students in the equation that we do the analysis on, because for federal purposes, graduate students are considered independent. And so they have their own resources that they can apply for through the federal government to help meet their expected costs. But if your award is based on 2 or 3 or more siblings being in school for the upcoming academic year, that's something that we're going to verify later in September. And again, that award is specific, and it's what it has done. What we've done is we've looked at your family's income and kind of divvied out the income in such a way, we've prorated it to where we think your family will be equally distributing their income for the number of dependents that they have in college. If it turns out that 1 or 2 of your siblings decides not to enroll in school, that will have an impact on your financial aid. So if you know this up front, the earlier you know this, if it happens, I would encourage you to reach out to your financial aid representative to say, my brother or my sister has decided that they're going to take a gap year and work and not be in school for the upcoming academic year. And we need to revisit how this is going to affect my expected family contribution. Again, if there's been a loss of employment, if, again, this is based on 2019, if the circumstances are not the same now as they were in 2019, that would be grounds for you to reach out to us to have a conversation about possible reconsideration. If there have been or were significant uninsured medical expenses, meaning out of pocket, that your parents had to pay for, whereby insurance did not cover it, that's grounds for you to reach out and have a conversation with us about as well. And in the last couple of years, we've been presented with a number of cases where a parent may be traveling or they work in one town or one city, and they have to make this commute maybe once a month. They've come home, or every other weekend. And so that's something that we call a 2 household allowance. And so you can have a conversation with us about that as well, because basically your family is maintaining 2 households, your permanent resident, and then where that parent is working, he or she has to pay rent for a house or an apartment there. So that is grounds also for conversation. And these are factors that would impact your expected family contribution. Now, the question also is also posed to us, the financial aid award that I've been given for this year, can I expect the same award all 4 years? I can't definitively say yes to that, and that's why we have students apply for financial aid every year, because we need to have the ability to do a need analysis to determine what your need is. In some cases where if a family's finances have increased, that means your need has decreased, and so therefore you would have less financial aid. And just the opposite, if a family has suffered a loss of income, then your need is going to increase and your financial aid is going to increase. So what you are looking at is a picture at time, basically back in 2019's income of what you are eligible for. As you matriculate at Georgetown, your student loans, they increase. As a freshman, again, it's $3,500. As a sophomore, that goes up to $4,500. As a junior and senior, that amount is $5,500. You also have the resource of a federal unsubsidized loan, which we don't automatically package, because that's very different. The interest rate on that loan is not being paid while you're in school. The subsidized loan that we've offered you, the interest is being paid by the federal government as long as you're in school. But it is a resource that if you need it, again, you should reach out to our office and speak to your representative about the possibilities of securing an unsubsidized loan or perhaps an increased loan if necessary. Other factors that change or have an impact on your financial aid is the number in the household. As you completed the CSS profile, we often ask the question, how many members are in your household? If you have a sibling that is currently in the household, but in a year or two, he or she decides to move out because they're on their own, that would definitely have an impact. If there is a grandparent that may not be living in the household, but someone that your parents are financially supporting, that's reason for you to reach out and have a conversation with us, and we can have detailed conversation in terms of what information you would need to supply to us to prove that support. There's an allowance that we could possibly give you depending on the documentation that you provide us with. Again, in the event that there's a divorce or separated situation, again, it's grounds for you to reach out and have a conversation with us because it could have an impact on your expected family contribution. We've talked about, the question is also asked again, if I receive outside scholarships, will my financial aid be adjusted? And the answer is yes. Keep in mind that we have to incorporate everything within your cost of attendance and that you cannot have financial aid in excess of that amount. And the adjustments that we make, there are 3 steps that we primarily do. Number 1, we look to see if we can reduce your family contribution. And we're given a federal number, and it's that number that's on your student aid report, that EFC. That is the federal number that the Department of Education tells Georgetown, hey, Greta, this family's family contribution cannot go any lower than this particular number. So again, I'm going to throw random numbers. Let's say we calculated your family contribution to be $10,000, but you have outside scholarships of say $5,000. So what I'm going to do, if we've calculated it at 5, the federal government has calculated at 5, if we've calculated at 10 and the federal government has calculated at 5, we're going to reduce it. First thing we're going to do is try to reduce your family contribution to the lowest federal numbers given to us by the Department of Education. Once we hit that federal number, we cannot go below that number. We then turn to the loan aspect of your award, which is a great thing to do because if you're able to secure enough outside scholarships, that buys out the loan component. So that reduces your overall indebtedness. And then if you go beyond that, in terms of the outside scholarships, we then look at the work study component. If we buy out the work study component, it does not mean that you cannot work. It just simply means that the type of employment that you would have to secure would be a non-work study position. And my colleagues in the Student Employment Office are there to help you. We have 2 categories of employment. One is work study and one is non-work study. So they are available to help you to secure a non-work study position if that's where you find yourself. So they're good things. It buys out your loan and it buys out the work study component. So it really somewhat alleviates the need for you to work unless there is a stronger financial need. And if there is, then I would encourage you to reach out to us so that we can have a discussion to see if there's anything further that we can do to help you. So what is guaranteed is that we're going to meet your need all 4 years that you're at Georgetown. What is guaranteed is that we're going to take into consideration any extenuating circumstances that you and your family may be facing financially. Now, there is one component that the need analysis does not allow us to look at, and that is consumer debt, credit cards, anything, outside of the broad picture of your family's financial situation. So consumer debt is not taken into consideration. And I tell, parents a lot of times it's good to, hopefully you've been prepared, or you've been trying to prepare yourself for the position that you're in right now. And when I initially started, I said, this is a sacrifice. So one of the things, again, is consumer debt is that financial aid does not lend itself to. So, if your parents happen to, or if you happen to secure a credit card and you've got this big credit card debt, your financial aid is not going to cover that type of financial indebtedness. So keep these things in mind. And I tell students all the time, you're at the age now where you're going to receive credit cards or notices from banks about your eligibility for credit cards. We're not saying that credit cards are bad things, but we need you to understand that credit cards there must be an understanding, if you're going to use them while you're in college, how they're going to be repaid. It's good to have for emergency purposes. And if you and your parents decide that, you can have this Visa card, but it's supposed to be used for X, Y, and Z, make sure that you use it specifically for X, Y, and Z. So that you're not incurring additional financial indebtedness for your family. I encourage my families and my students to make a 4-year plan so that you know exactly what you're looking at. We have all of the information on our website in terms of financial resources that are out there for you. We are here for you to help you through this process. Again, an $80,000 cost of attendance is nothing to sneeze at, but an investment in your knowledge is best paid for the interest. So I don't want you to have the price tag of any school, again, to defer you or just discourage you. But it is a sacrifice. And so the university's expectation is that everyone will play a role in meeting your expected costs. So that's just my quick synopsis of what we do. I welcome your questions. I did share the link with the staffs that you should have, so that you can reach out to our staff members directly if you have questions about your financial aid, and more in particular, if you have not received your financial aid award.
Greta, we do have some questions already in our Q&A box. Some I think you've somewhat touched on, but I'll still just plug them. We have one question here that says, how can we get a deposit waiver?
Okay. What I would do is reach out again to our office, and we work in teams. There's an associate director and then there's an assistant director. And we work in teams. If there's some reason that you need to articulate to us why you would need a deposit, talk to your financial aid representative, and we can best direct you in terms of sharing with you whether or not a reduced deposit is something that you would qualify for.
Okay, and we also have a question in here that says, and I know you did talk a little bit about this, but if you can just refresh, how does sibling enrollment in college and graduate school play into the package?
Okay, so again, with regards to the award that you have, and what I am encouraging, please, everyone to do, not only look at your award, but there are award messages that are associated with the award that we have given you. And so the award messages specifically tell you what went into making up the award. And if you've indicated on your profile that you had 1 or 2 or more siblings, that would be enrolled in school at least half-time at a four-year institution, then we've taken that into consideration. If you know that your sibling is no longer going to be enrolled, that will generally have an impact on your expected family contribution, because the way the equation looks at it now is that this family has one less dependent in school for the upcoming academic year, so that there are more resources. So if this is not the case, then you would need to reach out to your financial aid representative and have a conversation with us about it, and we can tell you the details of it.
Thank you. And then we have a question that says, if I receive any scholarships, can it go toward my parent responsibility?
Okay, so again, keep in mind that we have a federal number that was given to us by the Department of Education that we cannot reduce your family contribution to, lower than rather. So if you have outside scholarships, and if there is room for us to incorporate that by reducing your parent contribution and student contribution, we are certainly going to do that. But again, once we hit that federal number, let's say that number's at $5,000, we cannot reduce your parent contribution or your student contribution lower than that federal number unless there have been some extenuating circumstances which would cause us to do what we call professional judgment and to do a reanalysis of your application because of those extenuating circumstances. So our first step, again, we're going to go in and we're going to look to see how low we can possibly reduce your family contribution. And once we hit that threshold, we're then going to turn over, we're going to buy out your loan, and then we're going to buy out your work study until we've absorbed all of the outside resources.
Thank you again. Our next question in here says, thank you for hosting this session. If my financial aid has not been determined yet and my family has seen a loss of income in 2020, should I send in 2020 documents now before the initial financial aid package is prepared?
Great question. If your family has been impacted, again, keep in mind the current award is based on 2019. So if 2019 is not reflective of where your family stands financially, yes, please reach out to us. And on our website, there's a form called Changes to Reported Information form. So what you would need to do is complete that form and submit a signed copy of your parents' 2020 federal income tax returns. And I want to encourage everyone, when you submit your tax returns, please make sure that it includes all W-2 forms, all federal schedules. If there's a business, make sure we have all the business forms, the Schedule Cs, whatever schedules are associated with your family's business, because if you piecemeal it, that just prolongs the analysis that we have to do. We are not looking at 2021 income yet. That's much too early at this point, but we will certainly take a look at a reduction of income as it stands for 2020.
Thank you. And then we have another question. This is our last one right now, but just a reminder to everyone, we're still taking questions in the chat for a little bit longer. This question asks, if our sibling is going to be enrolled in graduate school, are they still considered an enrolled college student in this context?
Right. Unfortunately, we do not consider graduate students in the analysis. Graduate students by federal regulation are considered independent. So they have their own resources that they can apply for through the Department of Education to help meet their educational needs. So we will extract any graduate students from the number in college. And again, look at those award messages. And if that's the case, if you have a sibling that is, you're anticipating to go into graduate school, there should be a message associated with your award that says that we do not include graduate students in the need analysis.
That is all the questions we have in the chat. To our attendees, are there any other questions? Please feel free to use the Q&A function or to throw them in the chat. We'll keep an eye on both.
There is one, there is one charge or one component that financial aid does not take into consideration. All students at Georgetown are required to be covered under some form of health insurance. And so financial aid does not cover that because realistically, we don't know who needs health insurance and who doesn't need health insurance. So number one, what we need you to do is to find out if your current insurance that you're on, find out if it is portable, meaning will it cover you here in Washington, D.C. If you find out that it does cover you, it's portable, then what you can do in July, once you receive your billing statement from the Office of Revenue and Receivables, is you can waive that charge. On average, that costs, I think last year was about $2,900. So that's an additional cost that you don't have to incur if you are covered under health insurance. You'll simply need to supply the Office of Student Health with your health insurance information, and they will verify that it meets the criteria that our Georgetown plan does, and they will remove that cost. If you find that your health insurance is not portable, you should reach out to us to see if there's any way that we can help you in meeting that cost. The health insurance cost is only charged once a year, and it's only charged in the fall semester. So once you get it in the fall semester, and it's good for one full year, and if you're going to need that coverage for the next 4 years, you will have to make that request every year. One other factor, the financial aid, as we talked about, the cost of attendance, the room and board component is made up of your dormitory assignment and then the meal plan. The meal plan that is covered in the health insurance, the financial aid budget is the 14 meal plan. What dining services will automatically do is they default to the higher meal plan when you get your fall bill. So what you need to do is go in and make the adjustment so that you're living within the budget of your cost of attendance that your financial aid will cover. If you decide to keep the more expensive meal plan, then you would be responsible for the excess costs associated with that particular plan.
We've gotten 2 more really good questions in the chat. The first is, can you offer any advice on students seeking private loans?
Certainly. First and foremost, have a conversation with your financial aid representative. As we said, this is a sacrifice, and if it's a discussion that you and your parents have had and the agreement is that they want you to have some skin in this game, more so than your federal student loans, and private loans is the way that you're going to go about it. Georgetown is what we call a direct lending institution, so we do not recommend lenders, but on our website, we have a list of lenders that are in the educational business. It will require you to do a little legwork. There are some very good private loans out there that have really good interest rates that you can do. Now, as a student, if you are taking out this loan, it will require you to have a parental cosigner. So your parents will have to sign on that loan if you are approved.
And then we have a question that says, I know that in the CSS profile, there was a section that said to input any disruptions caused by COVID. Was that information taken into account when calculating the aid, or should we still send in tax information for 2020 that reflects the disruptions?
Again, this is, if you've noted it in your comment section, depends on to the degree that you gave us information. So if you just simply said, our family was impacted by COVID due to a loss of income, I would encourage you to follow up to make sure that everything that could possibly have been taken into consideration has been. If you haven't already submitted your 2020 taxes, there's probably just a note on your application that that you made a report about being impacted by COVID. So it's definitely worth you following up, in particular if you have not already submitted 2020 tax returns. So what I would encourage you to do there, again, there are 2 steps. On our website, there's a form called Changes to Reported Information. It's about a 4-page report. It's rather detailed, and keep in mind that we're moved by numbers. So the more detailed numbers that you give us, the better. So that form should be completed. In addition to that, you should upload a signed copy of your 2020 tax returns to the College Board IDOC portal. And that's for security purposes. I know a lot of people want to send income taxes via the email. We do not encourage you to do that. to have your information all over the internet. So anything that you need or you want us to look at, in particular as it pertains to taxes, please upload them through the College Board's portal, iDoc.
And then actually, I might have this be our last question, and then we'll have the last 5 minutes to sort of send out a little bit of information before our next event. What does other educational costs in the package breakdown include?
It's going to vary from person to person. When we talk about others, it could be medication that, if you're on medication that you have to purchase. If there's some particulars that you need for your dormitory room, it's going to vary. It's not a specific thing. But again, keep in mind, there is a budget for that. So if there's something that is specific that you think is going to fall outside of that, or that the budget doesn't cover that, certainly reach out and have a conversation. I think the whole key that, besides the fact that I want you to understand that financial aid is based on need, is that your financial aid representatives are here to help you through this process. We understand that $80,000 is nothing to sneeze at, and it's well over $200,000 if indeed you do decide to attend at Georgetown. So we're going to have very candid and honest conversations with you about the financial aid process, what we can and what we cannot do. But it is our hope that, you will partner with us. Again, we work as a team. There's an assistant and an associate director. And so we collaborate. And our goal is to help you get through this process financially responsibly, without having to worry about the finances.
Actually, so that was going to be the last question, but this last one also seems like a pretty important one. So we have a student who says they are currently estranged from both of their parents and trying to process independent status. What advice can you offer, especially if they haven't gotten their award yet?
Okay. It is very difficult for an undergraduate student to claim independency. It's not impossible, but it is a very tedious process. For federal purposes, to be independent, you would have to be age 24, married with a spouse, and dependent, a veteran. That's just a standard to be independent for federal purposes. And just because you're independent for federal purposes doesn't mean that we're automatically going to make you independent for institutional purposes. So if there are extenuating circumstances that has warranted this severance of the relationship, certainly if there's been, any interaction with the courts or the law enforcement, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to your financial aid representative to have a conversation so that we can talk you through this process and let you know what your options are.
Okay, so I think that is all of the questions that we have. If you have any additional questions, I have put in the chat, everyone, the financial aid contact, the Hoya Saxa Weekend Telegram, where you can also ask questions in the Telegram. I've put the evaluation. Please, 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 please fill out the evaluation. Let us know how this event was for you. And thank you so much, Greta, for offering us your time and your knowledge. It is always a blessing. We really appreciate it.
Right. And I just want to, again, just to congratulate everyone on your admission to Georgetown. I'm a little biased. I hope to see all of you here in the fall. I don't think you can go wrong. I've enjoyed my time here, and I'm open if anybody wants to reach out to me directly to talk about my undergraduate experience as well as my graduate experience. This is just a wonderful program. It's a wonderful group of colleagues that I have the privilege of working with. And I'm so proud of you. And I want to encourage you, even if you decide not to come to Georgetown, to stay focused and to keep pushing. You've worked very hard to get to where you are. We would love for you to be here with us and to be a part of our Georgetown family. Please stay safe. And I look forward to hearing from many of you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Greta.